people go back to, I remember when this happened to me 10 years ago at this company, and here's how they handled it. And right. And all of that emotion and all of those stages of grief come rushing forward and play out all over again in the current event. Right. And so, and those moments they don't stop there. Right. That grief process continues throughout however long it takes someone to finally get to acceptance.
So I hear what you're saying, and it's really powerful stuff. And it's also making this conversation more complicated, because now you're looking at a person you're going to deliver news to, but you have no idea what their history is, because this is just layered on top of that history. That history could be a little tiny stack. That history could be a giant mountain. And and you just don't know. So this begs probably, if not the big question for today, a big question for today, which is, as leaders, how do we navigate this complicated topic of grief? What can we do to make this either better when we're delivering the message or we're helping someone through it?
Sure. So, it's interesting. We do not deal with this well as a society, right? These are emotional, awkward, uncomfortable conversations, right? And so we'd rather avoid them. And so the very first piece of advice we give leaders is often very counterintuitive, and it's why our leadership training is so important to the process. The first tip we give leaders is actually engage in the process, right? Acknowledge that this emotion is going on, and engage the person in the discussion, right? Make the environment one in which they feel comfortable talking about this. In all of our research, our conversations ended in one of two ways, and I'll share the first one right now. Every single person who was treated well said by their leader, I was so thankful that I was able to talk about this at work. It made it so much easier that if I was having a bad day, if things were overwhelming me, I could raise my hand and say, I need help.
Yeah.
Or they said, if they weren't treated well by their leader, they said, I wish I was able to talk about this at work because it would have made it so much easier, right? And so engage, just acknowledge it, give people space, right? And adapt your leadership style to accommodate this, right? Now, I'm not talking about relaxing performance standards,
right?
But keep in mind that grief causes $75 billion a year in lost productivity just in the US alone, right? So recognize that and proactively figure out how to help these folks and support these folks when they need it the most, which leads to the last piece, which is involve the team, right? You're gonna have to go back to the team and say, hey, Brandon is gonna need help because he's dealing with some issue. You don't have to be specific, but he's gonna need more time off, or we can't overwhelm him with this project, so I'm gonna need some of you to pick up a little bit of the slack, to give you some space and time to work through whatever it is that's going on in your life.